Hey everybody, Mr. Quick here. Today we're going to be looking at Eureka Math / Engage New York Math, Module 2, Lesson 10. We're talking about the distributive property and products of decimals. Products, of course, meaning multiplication. So let's jump right into this. I'll give you a math problem. Let's look at 200 times 32.6. Well, I've lined up the decimals, except we don't need to do that, right? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 232.6, and I'm going to move that decimal out. So, oops, I know I have one decimal move to put back in the end, right? 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 2 is 12. Moving down, so I've got to put my little placeholder alien smiley face there, right? 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 2 is 4. Moving down to the next place value. So I've got my placeholder zeros because now I'm in the hundreds place. So my number will start in the hundreds place. 3 times 0, 3 times 0, 3 times 2 is 6. Add it all together, we get 0, 0, 2, 5, 6. I've got to put my decimal back in. My decimal's here now. It moves over one place. I end up with 6,520. That was a lot of work. And it wasn't so much that it was hard work, but it was just a lot. And so I want to show you a different method, and this is using the distributive property, a different method to solve this exact same problem that may be a little bit easier. I can break 32.6 into two different numbers. 32 and then 0.6 or 0.6. And so if I move this 200 down, I'm looking at 200 times 32 plus 0.6, right? Because if you add them together, you're going to go back to that 32.6. Now, breaking that down even further, I can look at this as 200 times 32 plus 200 times 0.6, or 6/10, right? We're distributing the 200 out. That's why it's called the distributive property. And so this becomes a little bit easier because now, because it's 200, I can use some of my math shortcuts that I know, okay? I'm going to take 6 times 2, which is going to give me 12. I've got 2 zeros to bring down, but because we're looking at a decimal, I've got one decimal move, so I've got to move that back. We're going to end up with 120 as this part of our answer. Over here, I know 32 times 2 is 64. Got to move these 2 zeros down. And I'll also move my addition down. So now I have an easier math problem. 6,400 plus 120 gives me 0, 2, 5, 6, 6,520. Same answer, just a different way of looking at the problem. And it's kind of that, I'm going to erase some of this just to give me some room, but it's knowing, it's what you can do knowing that, hey, that might be 32.6, but I can also look at that as 32 and 6, or excuse me, and 0.6. It's knowing that I can manipulate the numbers and make them do what I want. I can't change them, but I can change them into the parts that make up the whole. Let's look at another example. Okay, let's look at another example, and this comes straight from Eureka Math. I'll give you a rectangle. Not bad, right? Corner could meet there. Okay, let's say this side is 22 and 12/10 feet long. We're going to say this one is 500 feet. Okay, I'd like to ask you to determine the area of this rectangle. Let's say this is a patio. Okay, now we could take 500 times 22.12 and get our answer. Do a lot of work get where we need to be. Now, we are going to do that math problem, but I'm going to show you kind of a little bit shorter way, at least in my opinion, a shorter way of doing it. So if we know that the length of this side and the length of this side are the same, we can take that 22.12 feet and we're going to break that down. And we're going to say this part is just the 22 feet. And we're going to say this little part up here is the 12/10 feet. And so we're going to multiply 500 times 22, and then we're going to multiply 500 times 0.12, and we're going to get our answers. So let's start with 500 times 22. Now to solve this, and I know I'm showing you a lot of shortcuts, you could say 2 times 0, 2 times 0, 2 times 5 gives us 10. Add your placeholder happy face 0 because this number right here starts in the tens place. So our answer has to start in the tens place. 2 times 0, 2 times 0, 2 times 10, or 2 times 5. Add it all up, we get 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. We get 11,000. We can certainly do that. But I'm going to show you an example of a little bit of a shortcut. This is kind of how I look at it. 22 times 5 is the same as 5 times 22. So I can flip it. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. I end up with 110, but I've got these 2 zeros that I didn't add on to my 500 here, right? Add those in. I end up with 11,000. So as we pop back over here, 500 times 22 feet gives us 11,000. So I'm going to fill in that section here. And now we're going to do the 500 times 12/10. Okay, so we're going to do 500 times 12/10, so 0.12, 0.12. I know I'm going to move that decimal out. That's 1, 2 moves. I'm going to put the little 2 over here, put my little pen in it, right? Come back to that. So now I'm just looking at, for the sake of what I'm doing right now, 5 times 12. And again, I can do it a couple of different ways. I can say 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 5 is 10. I can say, I can move my little happy placeholder value there, right? It starts in the tens place because that starts in the tens place. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 5 is 5. Add it all up, we get 0, 0, 0, 6. I've got my 2 decimals, right? My decimal is right here right now, so I've got to move it 2 times. 60.00, which is the same as just 60. That's one way to do it. Or I could do it this way, knowing that I have that 12 times 5 and 5 times 12 are the same. I could do 12 times 5. 5 times 2 is 0, or 10. 0, drop the 0, carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. I've got 60 here. I have 2 zeros I need to add in, but I also have 2 decimal moves, so those eliminate those. Either way, I get 60 either way. Come back over here. I know this section here, right? 500 times 0.12 is 60. So now I've got all the information I need right here to make my final solution. I'm going to say 11,000 plus 60. We end up with 0, 6, 0, 1, 1. 11,060 square feet, or feet squared, because it is an area problem. There you go. So again, you can solve it by taking 500 times 22.12 and doing the kind of long way standard algorithm. You can certainly do that. But also knowing that, hey, I can break this 22.12 into a 22 and a 0.12 as long as I do all the math and then put it back together in the end, which is what we did down here when we added it back together. Get the answer. That might be a shorter way, a little bit of a shortcut, and also makes the math a little bit easier. So we'll do some more examples together in class, and we'll look at these together, but I just wanted to show you those couple of examples there. Thank you for watching.